Yes, my people, welcome back to another episode of Where's My Podcast. Today, we're joined by a very special guest. My introduction for Richard could be about 20 minutes, I'm not gonna lie. Artist, spoken word artist, designer. I even read something about you and they refer to you as a creative polymath. What does that mean?
So a polymath is someone that does lots of different things. So creatively, I've got a lot of strings to my career.
That's the perfect word for you. But anyway, today I'm joined by Richard BLk
Mkoloma.
Mkoloma.
There you go.
Let me do that again. Today I'm joined by Rich BLk Mkoloma. Cool, Richard. Third time lucky, man.
Good to
Thanks
be
for
here,
coming,
King.
man.
Yeah, man.
Hey,
Love.
Richard. Obviously, when we start the pods, I basically just kind of speak for like 30 seconds about why you're sitting in the chair, so why the guest is here. And I'll take it back to when I first virtually met Richard. Basically, Rashawn, Gabriel and I got invited to speak at Westminster University by Olga to their fashion management students it was. And we were basically on a panel talking about how to diversify the fashion industry and whatnot, something we obviously care about. And then Richard was also on the panel. And obviously, prior to starting it, I had looked to see who else was on it and I searched up Richard and I saw he's done so much and all of that. He's done a lot, which obviously we're going to speak about. But usually when I see stuff like that, I have like a misconception where I feel like this person's this type of person and he's from this sort of place. That's why he was able to do so much in fashion. But then obviously when we started the event and Richard's talking, all of a sudden he mentioned, I grew up in Ladbroke Grove, and I was like, what? Obviously I perked up because it's like in that moment, it's like that kind of dispelled all like the misconceptions that I had. And that was such a motivational moment because as I was saying to Richard before we actually started recording, like it's not often you see people, well, my generation anyway, it's not often you see people ascend to certain heights within the actual fashion industry. So that was something that obviously let me know that one, we could do it ourselves, and two, anyone else could do it also. So Richard, your story kind of epitomizes why we do this podcast. You know what I mean? Why we want to show people that you can do whatever you want in fashion. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you ended up doing it. So that's my introduction. I think the first question I want to ask, because I'm really interested in this, is obviously you're from Barbados. I'm Malawi. You grew up in Ladbroke Grove. So when I hear things like that, I'm thinking to myself, how does someone from that sort of background end up going down this sort of fashion route, if that makes sense? So if you could just talk a little bit about your upbringing and how you kind of ended up in fashion, I'd want to hear that.
Okay. First up, it's a pleasure to be here, man. I see what you guys are doing. And yeah, man, you guys are also living the dream, or at least the start of the dream. And you're building your own castle.
Thank you.
Do you know what I mean? So enough respect to you and the lads.
Thank you.
Growing up, so I grew up in Ladbroke Grove, born and raised Ladbroke Grove. My parents are from Barbados on my mum's side, Malawi on my dad's side. And I went to primary school in Grove, St. Charles.
Wait. You went to St. Charles Primary School?
Yeah.
We went to St. Charles Primary School. You went to St. Charles? How come I didn't know this?
Yeah.
No way. Have you seen it recently? It's changed a lot.
I've seen it. My nephews are in there.
No
man.
way.
My nephews are there. All of us went there.
Hey, we're going to have bear these moments. We're going to have bear these moments. Wait, so if you went to St. Charles, where did you live in Grove?
I'm literally on Grove, just around the corner from the station.
Oh, okay,
Ladbroke
cool.
Grove
And you used to walk all the way to St. Charles?
It's like 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. What age did you start walking by yourself?
I cannot remember.
Probably like year 6 or something, innit?
You know what? My mum used to work in St. Charles Hospital.
Okay.
So I think I always walked with mum.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that it wasn't even...
Yeah.
Burlington Danes was when I got independence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I felt like I was, big
He's
man.
the guy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But sorry for interrupting.
Okay.
Go,
So after St. Charles, went to Burlington Danes. Before it was an academy. So yeah, and that was cool. And I think it was in Burlington Danes when we had our final year, when we had to start to decide what college or university we want to go to. And my art teacher, because I was always good at art and sports, and my art teacher saw one of my projects, which was an autobiographical project, and I used my wardrobe to describe who I was. Like I felt my wardrobe epitomized me because I played sports, I had sports clothing, had to go church, went to church, so I had all my formal clothing, and then also played out on road, right? So I had my tracksuits and jeans, and I just felt it told my story. And she suggested to me fashion college. and it wasn't on my radar before. I thought I'd go down the route of graphic design. So I looked into it, and to this day, I can't remember applying to fashion college. I remember getting the interview, going on a holiday, coming back with my sketchbook of trainers, of faces, hands, a few clothes here and there, going to my interview at London College of Fashion. And I went there with a magazine called Right On, which was like a hip hop R&B magazine at the time, my sketchbook, and me. And I said, this is who I am, this is what I can do, and this is what inspires me. And that was enough to get me into fashion college. And yeah, the story started to get written from that point.
There.
Yeah.
So prior to your teacher mentioning that, like, did you have like a passion? It sounds corny, but did you have like a passion for fashion in any way?
Not at all.
Nah.
I mean, of course, growing up, you want to wear certain garms and have certain trainers, but we grew up mainly with my mum, and so money wasn't flowing like that. So I couldn't have the best trainers so this is how old I am now. I remember when the first Nike Air Maxes came out. What? So when you guys were wearing it, like, these are dope. I'm like, those are throwbacks. I remember when I could not get those. And so I had to learn. So I learned to kind of craft my style from not having much, but kind of making do and finding ways to kind of be cool without having the latest stuff. So that's where style came into it more than I couldn't buy fashion.
Yeah. I
could kind of craft my own, style. So when Adidas Torsions first came out, I couldn't get the high-end ones, the bright blue ones, or, I could get the entry-level ones, which were like 40 quid at the time. And I had to save up from my paper round to get those. And, people were like, what are those?
Yeah, you were that guy.
Yeah, I was that guy because they didn't see them before.
Yeah.
It was kind of under the radar, but I still was able to pick out stuff that looked decent. And so that was me crafting my style. When click suits came out, so all the old heads will know what I mean by a click suit.
Yeah, what's a click suit?
So a click suit was mainly worn by kind of popularized by dancehall culture, those people who were into dancehall culture. And it was essentially a top and bottom, maybe corduroy with prints on it or patches. And it was like a dope suit you'd get, but it wasn't a suit. It was like a overshirt and a pair of bottoms. And it was like all the rude boys would wear it with a pair of like ballet shoes, like suede and leather shoes, almost like desert boots, but sharper. And that used to be the thing at the time. I couldn't afford all of that, so I got the cheaper version, and I got the cheaper version of the ballet shoes, which was like a Viking shoe, as a brand. So it was about finding stuff that was kind of in the lane of whatever was happening, but the cheaper version that still looked good. And that kind of that's how I kind of developed my sense of style. But I wasn't into fashion any more so than the next man.
Yeah.
I was always artistic. So I was always sketching, drawing, and that, I thought I'd go into graphic design or art. I knew I was always going to be I was artistic, and I'd go into that field, but I didn't know what the field looked like. There weren't many people I could lean to say, well, show me what it looks like or how it works. I had to kind of figure it out. There weren't anybody I knew doing fashion. There was nobody I knew doing graphic design. These weren't careers that my mum or our parents of that generation kind of geared us towards.
Or even understood.
Even understood at all. It wasn't a thing. It was doctor, lawyer, respectable job, accountant or whatever it was. And
suit and tie jobs.
Basically, because they saw that as the way to progress. That was the way, that's what they had kind of, they grinded for us to get, a better step up in the, on the ladder. And so, I got good grades in school. And the question was, this fashion thing, where did this come from?
Yeah,
why fashion?
That's what I was thinking.
And like I said, it was my art teacher who, presented that path to me. And I went to the colleges. I went to open days of various colleges, and for some reason, it spoke to me.
Do you know, I find that so interesting, Richard? Yeah. Because the conception I have of fashion institution, it's very highbrow. It's very. This may be a misconception, but it comes across as pretentious. So obviously, you being someone from Ladbroke Grove, you dress a certain way already. You don't consider yourself to be part of that lane. Why did the fashion world, the real fashion world, kind of resonate with you?
it's funny. I was having a conversation today with a really good friend of mine, Terence. Also like me, working class, and we got into fashion. Working class black man, got into fashion, had decent careers, and I don't think I've ever been a fashion boy. Fashion is not the thing that drives me. It's the thing I do, but what I do is created by all the things I'm interested in, and I bring that to fashion. So hence going to the fashion college interview. So I went to the London College of Fashion, and going there with my sketchbook, which is, here's my technical skill, here's what I can do, here's what I'm interested in, which was, for lack of a better word, black or urban culture, music culture, and what comes from that. These things inspire me, and that's what I bring to fashion, right? So when I'm creating stuff, it's inspired by that. I didn't know what was happening on the catwalks. It wasn't the thing that drove me. I did have a brief work experience at a fashion TV program, and I was, so I got to watch the fashion shows maybe just a year before, because I was editing all the video reels. Not editing, I was signposting them for the editors. But that was it. And for some reason, I wanted to express myself creatively, and I saw that I could do that in fashion. And within the first couple of weeks of being there, I realized I could, because I could take all my ideas, and as long as I could translate them into a garment or something you put on your body, I was like, wow, this is home, this is cool. But I didn't have, I had to fight to go to fashion college. When I got there, I couldn't mess up. Full stop.
That's what I was even going to ask, because you mentioned something that was so interesting. You mentioned the fact that obviously you're a working class black male, and I compared that reality to the reality of the high fashion world. But you also said how when you went to the interview, you really went as yourself. You didn't feel like you needed to present yourself as somebody else. Now I feel like we're in a time where black culture, working class culture, has been popularized. What was it like in your day going to fashion school as someone like that?
For some reason, I knew, or I figured out quickly how to negotiate that space, because it's quite intimidating going to that type of institution. There weren't many people like me. There was maybe another guy like me who was black working class into hip hop, and he didn't last the whole course.
Why not?
It just wasn't for. Negotiating those spaces are hard, especially back then, because no one understood me. But I knew how to get my point, my ideas across. That's all that was. And I had one really great tutor, short little white lady called Hazel. She was brilliant, and she had my back, right? Really kind of saw something in me, and was someone who I could share my ideas with and help me develop them. And my friends wasn't so lucky. There was him and others that didn't last the course because they couldn't get their ideas across. And it's no fault on their own, because we're just young students. It's up to the institution, the tutors, to understand what we were presenting and help and nurture that talent. And so, the teaching for some people, it wasn't that great. And I think responsibility lies on them. But I was able to figure it out. But I think also what helped me, I guess, stay the course was even being out in Grove.
Oh my gosh, Richard! I'm so happy you mentioned this.
And
but
people,
keep going.
And no one quite understanding this fashion thing, because there was no urban streetwear where culture, brand, there wasn't really happening. No one, streetwear wasn't a thing. And I remember just bucking up with some of the rude boys, and people, guys I didn't know, and just trying to figure me out. Like, what do you do? And me thinking, as soon as I say fashion, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. And just looking at this guy and saying, yeah, I study fashion. Yeah. And he kind of looked at me and was like, fashion, yeah? Yeah. And I was waiting for it. He goes, all right, cool. College, yeah. Yeah, keep doing your thing, man. Keep doing your thing. And he walked off. Yeah. And I don't know what luck, blessing, whatever you want to call it, happened that day. But that's when I realized, oh, yeah, I could do this and still feel legit. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of, yes.
This goes back to kind of what we were talking about off camera, where I was saying how it's like you can obviously disagree with this, where I feel like when you were growing up, when there weren't, social media wasn't what it was or whatever, and you were growing up in a time where there was kind of less pressure to almost be like a certain way, if that makes sense. The reason why I was happy when you mentioned Grove was because, you know how you was talking about being able to kind of negotiate those sort of spaces, and like, you obviously said you had someone to kind of vouch for you in Hazel. How much of that ability to kind of navigate that space would you attribute to the things you kind of learnt from being in Grove? And the reason I craft the question this way is because with my own upbringing, I kind of felt like when you come from an area like Ladbroke Grove, where the divide between upper, like Kensington and Chelsea, South Kensington people and North Kensington people is so in your face, but we're also kind of linked in a certain way. So it's weird that we kind of have that ability to kind of code switch quite easily. Yeah. Do you feel like when you were in fashion school, like being from Grove helped you in that way?
You know, it's funny you bring it up because I've often mentioned that to people in terms of Ladbroke Grove being a very unique place where black, white, and then white including Irish, Portuguese, Moroccan, you know, especially in my time, these were like the big communities. And when I say black, I'm talking about mostly West Indian, or Caribbean, should I say. And we all, and then upper class, working class, and middle class, all kind of living in each other's pocket and almost socializing together to a degree. And so there were people, even in the house we grew up, you know, housing association versus someone who owned their own house, all in the same block, like crazy random. So I think it did enable us to kind of cross over different spaces and still have a level of comfort. So going to this place, it wasn't such a culture shock for me. You know, growing up in Ladbroke Grove, primary school was majorly white. Going to secondary school, I thought in my head at first, I thought it was majorly black. It just had maybe 25% black people there. But for me, it was like, wow.
That's a lot of black people.
There's, you know, and then growing up, you know, in this area, you kind of get a bit of steel about you. You know, you learn to take care of yourself and kind of stand up for yourself. And I think going to London College of Fashion at the time, you know, I wasn't really scared of who these people were supposed to be, you know, these authorities. I was also a bit anti-authority to a degree, but at the same time knew how to negotiate it, because I had my brushes in secondary school of talking back to the teachers or telling them about themselves and getting kicked out and learning how to maneuver. And so I think that helped me, you know, kind of negotiate the space. But I got lucky, you know, because there were others that were like me that weren't so lucky and, you know, didn't last. And, you know, some of my closest friends to this day, you know, on other courses that I took there, we're close to this day who also figured out how to negotiate these spaces. But growing up in Grove, I think is special in that it's not as kind of segregated across class lines or ethnic lines. So I think that definitely helped. Yeah,
I'm so happy you've kind of touched on that, because obviously you've had the experience. So you've lived it for many more years than me, because I've like had similar conversations to people, some of my good friends from the area as well. And when I like mention it to other people, they don't really get it. And it's like, when I'm talking about, I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything like that. I just feel like it is what it is. Like, for example, you know, your friend that didn't make it through the rest of the course, where did they come from? Were they from Ladbroke Grove as well?
Nah, they were on more on the outskirts of London.
Yeah, see, I can imagine, because they wouldn't have had that certain opportunity to mix with people of different classes or whatever. But anyway, so spoken about college, was there any moments in college where you said to yourself, like, one, I'm in the right place, and two, I'm going to be successful in fashion?
Two came before one. I had no choice. Like, I had to convince my mum to let me go to fashion college. I had to tell her I was going to be a success.
Did you believe it at that time?
Yeah, I didn't see why not. You know, I took to it like a duck to water in a sense, and I knew within the first couple of weeks that I was in the right place. Like, that was the one big feeling. I was like, yeah, this is for me, because I can express my own ideas. and there was no barrier to it apart from how I can interpret a brief and execute it. And they were like, yeah, cool. I was like, cool. You know,
you got used to that sort of freedom in a sense.
So yeah. College or university is a different freedom where you kind of, and I lecture at the London College of Fashion now, so it's quite a ironic twist. But when you go to university, instead of being told here are all your classes and every minute of your day you know exactly where you need to be, you get a few classes through the week, and you get given a task like a project or a brief. And it's up to you to figure out how to make it happen, you know. So there was a certain freedom in it that I loved. It's like, what, I can do what I want, how I want, as long as I get to the end. Wicked. Like I reveled in the freedom. It's hard. Some people don't revel in the freedom, but I reveled in the freedom. The fact I could do what I want, that helped. I was technically minded as well. Like I liked what DT, everyone calls it now. So design and technology. Yeah, I did.
I hated that.
So for us it was CDT, and I loved it. So technically, it worked for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had no choice to be a success. It was, you're coming from working class, black households. You have to succeed. There's no question about it. It's like I've sent you to school to succeed. Yeah, and that was a promise I made. Like, if you're gonna take fashion over going into more of a regular job, you better make it work.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to be even better.
Yeah. So that drove me. I'm a sportsman, so I was competitive. Yeah, I was competitive.
So you play basketball as well, right?
Football, basketball. I used to run athletics. So for me, it was like, all right, cool, let's do this. And so it worked for me.
So cool. You went through college. I'm sure you did very well in college, evidently because of what you've gone on to do. So after college, what happened? Like when you finished college, because obviously, like when you go to, let's say, a normal uni, I studied law. You finish uni, okay, cool. Now you got to go to law school, whatever. When you finish fashion college, what happens? Like?
So let me see. So kind of finishing started the year before I actually finished, because I specialized in tailoring. And I first started off in women's wear, and then I switched over and I started my degree. And I was allowed to skip the first year of my degree and go straight into the second year, and switched over to menswear.
Okay.
Right. So, and in that second year were a lot of industry competitions. So the industry would come in, set us a brief, and you try and win it. And I won the industry competitions. So the first one got me to live in Amsterdam for 3 months, working for a company called Dockers. It's like a sister company of Levi's. And that was my first taste of the industry, like working with a team. And then...
What was that like?
I had so much fun in Amsterdam. I had so much fun living by myself in a flat.
What do I?
I know where your mind's going, lads. Not that much fun. But, it was the first taste of true independence. And I had to, live in another country and get used to everything. But it was a really good experience for me. And I came back to London for a few weeks, and then I'd won a scholarship that the college had set to study in New York. So then I was in New York for 3 months at the FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology, studying fashion there. So I was like there for 3 months, just like, I'm in New York, just studying. So those were like my first forays into living internationally, in fashion in some degree. And so for my final year, we finished all of our final projects. We showed at like the Graduate Fashion Week, and I stepped back from fashion.
I say you won an award for that.
Right, you really did go through.
I do my research.
Yeah. So I was. Let me see. I was a regional. Okay, so the first I was a highly commended young tailor. It was set by like FHM magazine and menswear magazine, design magazine, back in 90 something, and so I essentially I was runner up, but I won a special award they made for me because it was like I was very close runner up. So I was highly commended, which was it was
good
cool.
enough.
Yeah, it was like it was just saying it was so close between the two, but so I got that award. And then the following year, I was like a regional finalist for like a competition in Germany, which was women's wear, ironically enough. So both were tailoring based, and I was quite conceptual with my tailoring. And then I took some time out. Like I didn't didn't go for a job straight after college. I wanted to figure out who I was. I wanted to, in terms of creatively.
And what does that entail?
Because at the time I was doing spoken word. I was doing a lot of spoken word, performing all over London. I designed women's wear, menswear, and I did some small freelance projects with some independent designers. And I was like, okay, what part of the industry do I want to go in? High fashion, denim, tailoring, sportswear, like what suits me. So I thought, let me just take some time and just figure it all out. Take on little projects, worked on magazines, worked on, like I said, small independent designers. And then I started my career proper in denim. So I literally went to denim, worked for Levi's, worked for a Japanese company called Michiko Koshino, based in London, working on their denim collection. So that took me in and out of Italy a lot. And I was given loads of responsibility right at the beginning to go in and kind of help expand their line. So they only had a few pieces. And my job was to go in there and kind of give them a full category offering, meaning denim, like in terms of jeans, jackets, shirts, cut and sew, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and then knitwear, true knitwear, so sweaters, and then jackets, outerwear, and just kind of broaden the line and give it an identity. And that kind of became the thing that I got known for in the industry. Was we need someone to come in, help us shape what the brand needs to look like, aligned with all the business goals and whatnot. So went into denim first.
Did you go into denim because of your experience at Dockers? Like, you liked it so much that you thought?
Yeah, Dockers was mainly chinos. It was like really boring stuff, but it was just an experience. But denim was always an interest because, like I said, if I went back to circle right back to school, where it literally that first little sketchbook or that project I had, which was me out in the streets, so sportswear denim, right? Me in shirts, formal wear, shirts, trousers, and me at school, uniforms, or you know what I mean? Like, so I had all these 3 different worlds that I used to inhabit. And so for me, denim, I know denim, or I knew the aesthetic of denim. And what I did was bring my tailoring experience into that world and my sportswear understanding into that world. So even though it was denim at the core, I was like, let's do some sportswear stuff. They're like, why? It makes sense. Trust me, we wear that on the street. You know what I mean? Tracksuit bottoms, jeans with a hoodie, denim, sportswear. You know what I mean? Like things made sense to me. And then, wearing a shirt, if you think of going to university, going to school, having to wear a uniform, but making sure it looked cool. So we made sure our trousers were oversized in school. We had our blazers, like, Mom, let's make it one size bigger.
The tie a bit too short.
The tie a little bit too short. The shirt a bit baggy out. You know what I mean? So you made a way to make it translatable. So for me, all of these codes made sense. Denim and tailoring made sense. Sportswear and
sorry to cut you. This question might sound a bit weird, but everything you're talking about, I saw it as like something that you would kind of do unconsciously. Like it was almost so normal to kind of make your uniform a bit different. I don't know, it's because of who we are, where we come from, but it didn't seem like something you ever had to think about. So I find that interesting that you managed to get to the point where you were thinking about that consciously and you thought, you know what, a minute, I've been doing this forever. And I can kind of apply these same sort of principles to another, to anything really within fashion. Like, was there like a moment or a time where you realized that?
I think that's part of the training that you kind of get, or that I got in, at the London College of Fashion. I'll call it LCF to be short because it's a long, which I was always on a quest to find my own unique style and to develop that. And so that became, how do I blend all the worlds that I know into one? Because that's what I do anyway. It made sense. The fashion world was a little bit, streetwear was very new. Streetwear came mainly from America. So me reading the magazines, the Right On magazine, a magazine called Too Hype, there's one called Black Beat, there was Vibe, there's all these magazines that I used to just consume. Then Trace, loads of magazines I used to consume. And you see the street culture, streetwear scene burgeoning, Carl Kanai, Cross Colors, PNB Nation, Walkerwear. There's all these brands that were literally hip hop kids designing stuff for hip hop kids, and that was one of my inspirations because I understood it. You know, I listened to the music, I understood street culture. I saw what we were doing in London, which was a little bit different, but we were mixing whatever we could find and making it look cool and relatable to the street. And so when I was doing tailoring, it was like, how do I bring that into my tailoring? When I'm doing denim, it was how do I bring tailoring into denim? How do I bring sportswear into denim? Then when I left, so denim was over here, and then I went to Sean John. So that was working for P. Diddy on this small little niche denim line called Blue. And again, it was, okay, you do denim. Michiko was quite conceptual denim, like really avant-garde left field. Like we were doing like weird stuff, like we were trying to flip the script all the time. And it was like, how do I bring that into it? But also, I was like, you know what? But we can also bring in a blazer. A blazer. I was like, yeah, trust me, we can do a blazer. So bringing in like a cotton suit, almost like a blazer jacket and shirts. And, you know, before Jay-Z was talking about change clothes and busting shirts, we were doing that at Sean John. We was doing that. we was doing that, you know. And
Richard, you know what I find so interesting? Because obviously you told us you took a break. So I'm assuming though you were still young when you were in these rooms. And coming up with these ideas. Like, why did they trust you?
I have no idea. Like I said, I got lucky early on. I think that time out I took to kind of hone my style, because I was doing still a lot of sketching and just designing. I kind of had my own, a certain lane that signature. I felt I got lucky and blessed with Michiko because I found a company that liked what I liked my portfolio, respected the fact I came from Levi's, but also I almost forgot, during that time I was also training at Paul Smith with the bespoke tailors. And so knowing that I had that kind of, these names behind me and that skill level, you know, and said, okay, we like this guy. We see his portfolio's work. We think he could fit. And so they trusted me with quite a senior job. And then going over to Sean John, you know, similar conversation. You know, we want somebody to come in and just do some freelance for us. I had a conversation with the creative director. He liked my portfolio, my work, and decided, look, just move over to New York. Just come and join us. Just join the team. Ironically, first I said no.
Why?
Aesthetically, I was like, you know, and here's the irony of everything I've just said was, Sean John as a label, when it was doing a lot of the tracksuits and, you know, it was quite clean stuff. It wasn't what I was doing. I'd come from doing like quite conceptual stuff, streetwear, tailoring, denim mixed together.
Very avant-garde.
A little bit. And Sean John was a little bit, for me, I thought it was more too commercial. But they said, nah, there's a small line that they have called Blue. And here's what they want you to do is to go in and just give an identity to the line and expand it. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting project. All right, cool. And so that took me into that world. And again, they trusted me. I guess I got lucky. I had I knew how to express myself. Wasn't too intimidated by the spaces I was in, which I think helped a lot. So sitting across the table from Diddy and thinking, I saw you 2 years ago, Biggie, in concert in London.
That's mad.
You know, I was in the crowd jumping up like a madman, you know what I mean? And I'm opposite you, talking about my work, and it was surreal. But again, coming from Grove, it was funny because, do you know Billy Ocean?
That name sounds
He's
very
like
because of America.
Like an old soul singer. But the thing is, I grew up in Grove. I used to go to this play centre called Acklam.
Oh, okay.
So Acklam was, you know, it used to be a youth centre, skateboard. I'm a bit older than that. And so I went to Acklam, and Billy Ocean one day rocked up, and he was like, he had a big like pop hit, like soul R&B singer. And we're like, Billy Ocean's gone to Ebony Panyard, the steel Panyard. Ebony. And he was playing there. So Grove was like that. You would occasionally see some kind of superstar or somebody pass through. And I guess it's a bit of like, you don't want to be too, oh my God, look at this. You kind of like hold it down a bit, like, all right. So I was like holding it down. You know, inside you're thinking, wow, this is different. Really but it wasn't really.
Them times he was only Puff Daddy, innit?
Yeah, he was Puff Daddy. Yeah. And you know what was funny? I think, remember that conversation? Remember there's the video with Ben Stiller in it. Was it the song? They Can't Hold Us Down. I forget the song. It's a song they had. It was
we
the
ain't
bad.
going nowhere.
Yeah,
we ain't nowhere.
yeah. So remember the beginning of the video?
Yeah.
It's Ben Stiller saying, "Hey, what do you open the door and go,
yeah,
what do I call you?
yeah.
Diddy, P Diddy, Puff Daddy."
yeah.
I literally had that conversation with who became the guy who became my manager. I said, "What do I call him? Is it Puffy? Is it P Diddy? Is it Sean Combs, Mr. Combs? Like, what do I call him?" He was like, "Yeah, just call him Puff. You'll be good."
Just call him Puff.
Yeah, and so I was like, "All right, cool." So I literally had that same conversation. But yeah, I think it was, I was given a lot of trust. And of course, the pressure's on to deliver to that trust, which I did. There's always bumps along the road, things that don't work. You like, go back and work it out, come back and make it happen. And I did. And so I was lucky in that sense. I got given a lot of trust quite early on to go in and kind of put my fingers and get my hands all over collections and give them some type of shape and form. And a lot of that came from the aesthetic I was bringing to the table, the training I got from college. I think college, it's not the only route into fashion, but I do think it gives you a certain rigor and a certain way to develop ideas and keep questioning the idea and developing it more and just really getting to the core of what you're trying to say. And so, I think that helped.
As you've been talking, like, because I've been getting more into fashion stuff, and you mentioned names like Paul Smith studying tailoring and things like that, and I'm sure you would have been, I've read somewhere that you was like interning on Savile Row or something like that.
That was at Paul Smith. It was like Savile Row techniques they would teach.
Exactly, so proper tailoring. Like, I suppose when you were growing up, your friends from around here, like, did they understand what you were doing?
Not all the time, to be fair, not all of them, but everyone was kind of supportive. Like, it was weird. I think the difference is, like, when we talked earlier about this generation having certain challenges, not seeing people in these spaces. You have social media which shows people doing certain things. Like, we didn't have any of that. Like, we didn't know where to get jobs, how to find jobs. There was like 3 of us that used to have each other's back. Like, I went to an interview, here's what the questions they asked me. Here's what they were looking for in the book. Make sure you got this in your book. And, we really had each other's back. I was going through like phone books and trying to find out, who do I talk to? Don't know who to talk to. There was no LinkedIn. There was no way to know even who was at these companies. So we just had to hustle and figure out ways. And someone got a little inkling of something, would share it. It was, proper hustle. What's the question again?
My question was just, because the reason I asked that is because I feel like the moments where fashion has kind of led you in front of P. Diddy that you and your friends were partying to, listening to 2 years before, I suppose it would have been those moments that would have kind of made a lot of the people around you realize, wow, like, Rich is really doing something. Do you know what I mean?
I think the time when people really was like, oh, wow, was the Sean John thing, because people knew, they knew about Puffy, they knew about Sean John, and they knew the fact that I was leaving the country. And prior to that, it was people in fashion knew, people who were like, oh, Michiko, we know Michiko. Levi's, most people know Levi's, but I was there for a short time. So, so people knew. Some people knew, but I think it was when people were like, oh my God, wow, you're going over. And it was, it was different, but living in Amsterdam and prepared me for that, and living in New York prior to that prepared me for that move, right? So there's like a series of events where I got lucky, but there was no template. It was just kind of just figure it out. And because there was an unknown, I think people also gave you a bit of leeway to like, okay, let's see what fashion. All right, cool, whatever. All right. Like, it was a big thing. It also was a bit of an unknown. So there was not much
a bit paradoxical.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Richard, you've been kind of speaking extensively about being brought in to brands to kind of almost craft their brand, or you're saying extend their like collections almost, and think of new things they can make. What does that mean? Like, how does that happen? Do you know what I mean? How can you walk into someone and say, you should make blazers? Do you know what I'm saying? What goes into that?
Well, I think at the beginning of the process, I guess it's kind of, I've always seen it in like there's 3 parts to it. There's always the brand part, which is, what do we stand for as a brand? Like, what are we about? What are our values? What's our brand mission? Where are we trying to go? And every brand will tell you, here's what we're about, right? The second part is the business side, which is where they're trying to grow the business. And there's usually a person or a team that are like, well, we're trying to go from X amount of money or X amount of doors, like places we sell in, to this. And then there's the creative side, which is, you know, we're going to create the product. And there's marketing as well, to be fair. There's marketing, which is, once we've done all of that stuff, it's like, let's go tell the world. And so my job has always been to, and I've always quite, I guess, savvy enough and smart enough to understand I need to balance the brand with the business, with the creativity, as well as make sure that I'm still being kind of true to myself. And so within that, the conversation's always, all right, cool, here's what's happening out in the world in terms of trends, but here's who we stand for as a brand. And sometimes you follow the trend, sometimes you're not about the trend because you're your own thing. And then there's the business side, which is, well, here's our customer, here's what they expect or what they're into, here's the shops or the stores that we're trying to sell into. And my job has been to kind of rationalize all of that and then still kind of be myself and add it to what the brand already does, but give them something else. And I've always found that puzzle quite fun to play with. And so we're given a creative brief, which is the creative direction. Here's the mood board, here's the things that inspire us. And, you know, we're given a business brief and here's where we're trying to go with it, right? And that's always the challenge, is how do I create stuff that's really cool or interesting or new and fresh and innovative, but also that we hope will sell. And I say hope because there's never a crystal ball. You know, anyone that says, we know this is going to sell this much, you kind of don't, but you have enough insight, whether it's through data, analytics, or just good conversations, to know that generally if we do this kind of stuff, we're going to sell X amount of product. And so, yeah, I think I've been good at being able to balance all of those and then communicate to people. Most of our job's communication. Here's an idea I've got, communicated to the right people in a way they get. And I've been, you know, pretty good at being able to, you know, through trial and error, through translate the creative stuff to the creative people and what that means business-wise to the business people, and then have them say, okay, cool, let's give it a try. And then the marketing people do their thing and get it out there. So it's just being able to balance those three elements, and then and present stuff that's decent. Yeah,
I can see why you're Electro, you know, because you kind of like, for me, these things are complicated. But you've explained it in a really kind of simple enough way that I understand.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, so obviously you've worked at Puma.
Yeah.
You've worked at Adidas. You've worked at loads of places. A lot of it. I can't list everything. But, you know, with what you were just saying about having to kind of bring those four worlds together, so that the business brand, the business world, the brand world, the creative world, the marketing world, where were you where you found that most difficult? And how did you kind of overcome the adversity? And what did that adversity look like? Was it the people you were working with? Was it the fact that the company wanted the brand to do things that didn't actually, I don't know, associate with the actual brand? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Good question. How do I be diplomatic? So every place I've been to has had its challenges. The easiest place, I think, was Michiko, because it was quite new and the brief was kind of do crazy stuff, literally, you know. So we could do what we want. We had a lot of fun, and that's what people came for. So being super creative, fit within the brand, and it fit where the business was going, because that's what people wanted from the brand, right? The toughest, I think, might have been Sean John was tough, because so Blue was a small, tiny little line that was like high quality denim, you know, quite smart, almost preppy, but wasn't like streetwear. It was the whole kind of dress up streetwear type of vibe, right? But Sean John was winning design awards in America. It was like 300+ million at retail. It was massive. That was the focus. That's what everyone knew Puffy for, Sean John. And so presenting this new line that had a new aesthetic, which was a bit cleaner, really, a bit sharper. Had some conceptual stuff, some stuff that didn't work, and stuff that was like totally, in the lane. The challenge there was, how do we communicate this new thing that Puffy's doing to a world that was like, we don't care. We want the thing that we know works. So the challenge there was people didn't get the brand, so to speak. And then in terms of marketing money, it was pushed into the big brand because that's where the success was. And so that was one of the biggest challenges. And that's the first realization that it's not all just about design. You know, you could do whatever you want, but you need to be able to communicate it in a way that people get and then have all the support behind it. Puma, I think we skip over. I went to Fila while I was in New York as well.
Fila was lit them times, didn't it? They weren't big them times. Nope. So because Fila had its little moment, especially in America.
Fila had a moment way before I got there. Oh, okay. And when I got there, it was having it was a moment where it wasn't super cool. And our mission was to kind of bring it back, present something new, but they had a new direction. And people, again, this was where the brand at the time was so not considered as something that people wanted. That you had to do loads of marketing. And I think that was probably the learning curve there. And that was probably the learning curve there that design and marketing need to be super entwined. And then you have to have the business to have all the right conversations with the right people that would say, yeah, we want this new thing that you're giving us. Because before then, the brand wasn't in a good place. The equity in the brand was quite low. And so that was a massive challenge. And they've only come into prominence after, whoever was running that company, that part of the business moved. And the owners now is in Korea, I think. I think Korea own the Fila brand now, the Korean part of the business, one of the licenses. And they managed to pull it back where it is now. And so they've done an amazing job doing that. But that was one of the big kind of challenges, was doing stuff that we thought was cool, but you need to have the right places who are ready to receive you because they see you a certain way. You know what I mean? So if people don't look at you as a certain brand that fits what they're trying to do, they're like, well, we don't know. It's like me saying, yeah, Dunlop's back. You know what I mean? Like, phenomenal heritage brand, but you couldn't just bring out a new collection and then have everyone love it. It's like you got to kind of do a lot of the groundwork first to get people primed for it to go, oh, we're waiting for that. So yeah, those are some of the lessons I learned. And
sorry, Richard, I had cut you off. You were going to speak about your time at Puma, but then I kind of held you on.
No, I just think that was one of the places when I was initially there where the brand was going through a resurgence, where the brand wasn't seen as the coolest brand, but they did a lot of work to kind of position the brand as this really cool sports lifestyle company. And they got the marketing and the design and the brand and the business seamlessly correct. And so that's when you first saw Puma really come back to the forefront. When they had collaborations with Alexander McQueen, Hussein Chalayan, I think they had the one with Jill Sander just before that. All these, they were one of the first brands doing a sports brand doing high-end collabs with high-end designers. And that's where I got, I worked with Hussein Chalayan, like a big, kind of high-end.
Cypriot guy.
Yeah, Greek Cypriot, yeah. So, Turkish Cypriot. I'm getting it wrong, forgive me. And partnering and working with him on his collab with Puma was one of the first big designer collaborations you saw that made sense and worked. And so that was a company that had it, had all the dials just in sync, at one point, and since then I think Adidas have come up.
Yeah.
Nike, and I turned to like a fashion sports company, and
because you were. I'm happy you mentioned that, because you were kind of at the beginning of this whole sort of wave of designer sportswear brands collabs, 100%. Where I'm sure there was a time where it's like, for me anyway, when we were wearing Adidas, unless it was a tracksuit or we were playing football, we weren't really wearing it. Obviously, we wear like the shell toe shoes and whatnot, but it weren't seen as like a
street culture brand.
Yeah, like it wasn't seen as like almost like a fashion statement in that sense. Like I suppose when, for example, speaking of the shell toes, when obviously Run DMC were lit, obviously the shell toes were seen as a fashion statement. But when I was growing up, Adidas didn't have none of those. But now obviously we've got Yeezys.
Yeah.
So they've got that. Do you know what I mean? So how does that sort of happen? Like, how are sportswear brands able to become, like, I don't want to call it high fashion,
but they're in that conversation.
How do they get there?
Good strategy. But I think a lot of it is, a lot of these brands realized, okay, so hip hop culture, and when I say hip hop culture and all of the culture that kind of derive from that, whether it's grime culture, whether it's other kind of street-based, whether it's skate culture, kind of street-based cultures that have music attached in a big way to the conversation that the community is having. I think a lot of the sports brands, or at least Adidas, realized that, hey, we're in this cultural conversation, right? Because we are working with, and it's part luck, it's part deliberate. We're working with people that are seen as cultural commentators and cultural tastemakers, creators, and we're just going to keep that conversation going, and we're going to start collaborating with them to help them show us what tomorrow looks like. You know, so working with Pharrell, like Adidas do a lot of work with Pharrell.
What they call the human race or something.
Yeah, like that. You know, with Kanye, with the Yeezy. But they worked with lots of other designers. They worked with, you know, the whole Y3 collaboration. Yeah, who's
that? Japanese
designer Yoji Yamamoto.
Oh, okay.
And his stuff is like super conceptual, on point. And that's been going. That's one of the original kind of designer collabs that worked. And so they realized they're part of that cultural conversation, and they just continue to support culture in a certain way. Some brand, you know, some of them sometimes they take more than they give. I think that's a fair criticism in terms of what's to give back to these cultures and whatnot. And just keep nurturing those conversations. You know, you see it with Jordan, the Jordan brand trying to have more conversations with culture, collaborating with PSG, and you know, supporting the kids, having a football culture conversation. And I think that's where the sports brands realize we are part of these conversations, so let's ramp it up. Jordan was a big part of that. I think the success of Michael Jordan and Nike, and how those shoes transcended basketball. You know what I mean? It was just cool to have those shoes in the Spike Lee films, or, you know. So I think they realize they're part of the cultural conversation, and they just continue it. That's what kids wearing these stuff on the streets. Let's talk. So they leverage it, exactly. Yeah.
So Richard, obviously with all your experience, like everything you've done within fashion, like obviously our channel, we speak a lot to like up and coming designers and stuff. We really want to help them. We want to help anyone that wants to get into fashion, but them a lot of the time anyway. Like, what makes a successful brand? I know this is going to be a difficult question to answer because there's so much that goes into it. But let's say you have a nephew, and he's like, "Yo, Unc, Richard," or you call you uncle. Yo, Unc, like, I don't know, man. I'm thinking of starting a brand, man. Okay. Like, what sort of questions would you ask him, and what advice do you reckon you would give him?
So that's an easy one because my nephew does have a brand.
I didn't know that. I did my research, but I didn't research that.
He has a brand where he's like a sneaker reseller.
Okay.
And his, you know, they're on Instagram. They're called the Slick Supplier.
I like that name.
So a little plug there.
Did you come up with the name?
No, that's them. It's all them. It's all them. Slick Supplier. I helped them with the logo and thing. You know, and they, you know, so the conversation with him was, okay, cool. You know, so you're a reseller of shoes, right? But it's like a bespoke kind of thing where people can ask them, I'm trying to get these shoes, can you get them for me? And they'll offer that service as well as get some of the latest new sneakers that drop. And the conversation with him has been, well, you know, what do you stand for? You know, what I would say to him is, what do you stand for in terms of a brand? What's the mission? Where are you trying to go? What are your values? And once you get all that done, it's a case of, okay, we know our values, we know what our customer wants, we know what our value proposition is, we know what our customer is and who they are and how they live, right? Where do they live? What do they do? So what are they into culturally? You know, so if you know that all your customers go on football matches or basketball matches, or there's certain films that come out and you know you're going to find them somewhere, or they go to certain events, you know, you meet them where they are and have an authentic conversation with them. You know, where you present what you do, but find a way to support them, what they do, amplify their own voice, blah, blah, blah. And then you just work out, how do we deliver a product to them or a messaging to them, you know, and you hopefully it's a two-way conversation that you're having. And at that point, then it's just a matter of figuring out, right, who do we need to collaborate with, link with, who, you know, what do we need to do? So, okay, do we need to have an Instagram page, a website? Are we getting scooters and deliver it to people? Whatever it is, right? Whatever your concept, how do we deliver stuff to them, and what are the activities we need to do? And then you just figure out the money, right? You figure out where do we make our margin? What are the costs involved? And then increasingly, what's great about this generation is more so than ever, there's this demand for like, well, what are you doing ethically? What are you doing sustainably? How are you not mashing up the world for us when we're a little bit older? What are you doing that's, you know, are you the good guys? And fashion, you know, it's a very consuming business. And so there's lots of efforts to try and balance it out. But yeah, these are some of the questions, like what you stand for, where you going, who are your people, how you reaching them, how you delivering value to them, more so not just product but value as well, how you enriching their lives to a degree. And then sort out the money, and then what's your ethical stance? I think that's an important question.
It's an important one, especially in today's day and age.
Yeah.
With all those like fundamentals you said, again, in your 20 odd years in fashion, more than that, or
just about that. It's, like, it's just a little bit more,
Okay, cool. Just about that. So all those years in fashion, have you ever like come across brands that kind of don't do those fundamental things or whatever, but have somehow been successful?
I think they all do. It's hard to be successful just through luck, like consistent success just through luck. I think some brands they hit on something, maybe they don't know why, but they're doing well, and then they get people in to help them progress and strategize and do even better. And there are brands that don't stay with the moment, and they just die off, and you don't hear about them anymore. Or you know, big brands that we've known about that have done well, and then it goes left somewhere. Fila were great at one point, went quiet. There was Diodora, went quiet. You know, there's lots of brands that, and then everyone has their moment. You know what I mean? So you're seeing Fila have a massive resurgence. You know, Reebok goes up and down. You know, and it's just it's tough to see where brands falter, because things change, and things nowadays change so quickly that brands need to move even quicker. You know, the pandemic has killed a lot of brands. Where's Topshop?
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Right, at one point they were untouchable.
Yeah, because they're the ones with like the Jamie jeans, whatever. Girls buy the jeans with different names or something like that.
Everything. They had the high street on lock. But what the world changed, the climate changed. And when I say the climate, the way people consume fashion, COVID hit. You know, so it showed. So business models are changing all the time, and so I think brands have to move quicker, be more nimble. And so, it's a challenging time. Like, we don't know what's
really
going to look like.
Yeah. Richard, you know, you're talking about, obviously, for example, you mentioned Diodora. Yeah. Like when my generation would see that, there was never a point where they were lit for my generation. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you've obviously got sportswear brands, Nike, Adidas, Puma, and to my generation, it seems like they've been at the top forever, to the point where they have such a hegemony that they can never like not be involved. Do you know what I mean? Right. Like, why do you think that's the case? And two, do you agree? Like, do you ever see Nike and Adidas not being at the top?
There's challenges all the time. Under Armour's coming up hard. Fila's doing their thing, especially in other parts of the world. It's going to be hard to dislodge some of these brands, but I've worked at Puma when it was on the up and it's dipped. You don't hear much about them in the culture conversation as you did before.
Yeah. They're trying small.
They're trying. So they're re-strategizing and coming back, but nothing's for certain. I think some brands are more clued up, but there's always new entrants to the game. And I think no brand can rest on their laurels. Like for me to say, they'll never fail. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what's around the corner and how brands gonna be able to cope. You know, anything could happen. Anything could happen. So no one's place is safe.
It's interesting you said that, guys. I know we ain't got long left, but I got a couple more questions. It's interesting you said that, because last time we recorded, we were speaking to the Fashion Road man, top guy, And I asked him a similar question, but I spoke to more high-end brands, so the big fashion houses, so LVMH and whatnot.
Right.
And we were having this basically same conversation, talking about how companies need to evolve and whatnot. Right. And I'm saying, I made a point where I was like, I feel like LVMH or whatever, LV, it's been a status symbol. The way the world's changing in terms of like climate change and being more ethical and whatnot. Sometimes ethical brands could become the new status symbols. And he partially agreed, but his point was that the bigger you are, the more money you have, the easier it is for you to evolve and therefore remain at the top.
Yes, but it's a double-edged sword.
Why?
Because the bigger you are means you have more people, more processes that you have to convince and change, right? So it's actually, I think it's easier for smaller brands to be more nimble, right? Isn't it? Think of boats. Just little small speedboats can move really quickly, move direction really fast. If you've got a supply chain of one supplier and you realize, look, we make all of our stuff with this guy, but he's not ethical.
You just get a new one.
We can find a new guy. And there's only one new guy we need to find. So now we found someone who's ethical, shares our values, we can move. And there's not many people in our company to convince. When you've got a bigger company, you've got shareholders, you've got directors, you've got design teams, you've got design teams in other countries, you've got much more of a supply base. So if you've got 50 suppliers and only 4 of them are compliant, you've got to either get the rest of them up to speed, or you've got to find another 40 plus, right? So it can take time, and then you need people to go in and make sure they're compliant and check them, make sure that they're up to standard, and then you've got all the fabric that you might have bought, all the inventory, and if you're a big company, you might pre-buy a lot of stuff. And so it's a lot of expense. You've got to turn a big ship around. And so while they've got the resources to do it, sometimes it's speed they don't have. Or you've got too many people to convince. Shareholders are like, look, I want my profit at the end of the year. I want my dividend.
Profit is king.
Right? And you're telling me that I've got to take a hit on that so we can be more ethical? If they're not sharing the values, it's a slower, you've got more conversation. So I think they've got the resources. It's whether throughout the company, they've got the will and the ability to shift everybody. And some of the big fashion houses, Kering, Gucci's under them, they've made big statements in terms of what they're planning to do in terms of being more sustainable, more ethical. And of course, people are watching them with a keen eye to see that they're not just, greenwashing. Right? So there's lots of conversations going. There's brands that are trying, and people are, it's tough for the big ones, and this is where there's opportunities for lots of smaller brands.
Small ones, now's the time, guys. You hear that? It's your time. But anyway, Richard, honestly, mate, I could continue talking to you for like another 2 hours.
Same.
So we definitely got to have you on here again. I think maybe next time I might give you like a little pocket that we can just go. Do you know what I mean? Because we spoke about so many different stuff today.
Of
but
course.
I got one more question. Obviously, you're a lecturer. You've had an incredible career in fashion. Commend you on that. Highly motivational, highly inspirational. If you could give one piece of advice to anybody that wants to have a similar, I don't want to say similar, but a career in fashion like yourself, what would it be?
Before you do you, figure out you.
Before you do you, figure out you. Yeah. Keep going.
Know what you offer, what you bring to the table. No one can copy. It's the biggest cliche. There's only one you. You're unique. But if you're able to pool all of your own experiences and present something that's quite unique, that's always going to be helpful. And just know your stuff. Whether you're a marketer, designer, a product developer, know your stuff. I think that will stand you the test of time. So know your stuff, know your craft.
And now we're at a time where knowing your stuff is a bit more accessible because we have the internet. Do you know what I mean? You can email someone and get an internship, whereas in your day you would have to go knock on one of the doors in Savile or something. Hustle, yeah.
But also, don't be afraid to get in front of people and present yourself. I think that's the lost art of doing that. And having conversations.
It's true.
It goes a long way. I know this is the generation of slide into the DM. Even networking is like, let me drop you a DM. And that's valuable because you got access. I think that's what we never had. But it's just being able to have conversations with people.
Hey, Richard. What a flipping conversation.
Yeah, man. Same here, bro.
Guys, Richard, when but hey, Richard, just where can they find you if you want them to find you? I see you got a nice little following on LinkedIn and that.
It's all right. It's all right. So you find me on LinkedIn. So Richard Mkoloma. Yeah. It's a very easy name to find. Rich BLk. So that's the spoken word stuff and the more the musical stuff I do. So richblk.com. Instagram's Rich BLk Shoots. Black spelled BLK.
Why Shoots? Do you do photography as well?
It's Instagram. It's a photographic platform. So Rich BLk Shoots. And there's Rich BLk Ink, which is going to be more the music and poetry stuff or whatever. And I'm trying to simplify it all. But,
there's a lot. There's a lot. Anyway, Richard, thank you so much, guys. Let's wrap it. Thank you for watching. If you ever want to take in future episodes on the go, you can also find us on Apple Music and Spotify. When you get there, please, if you don't mind, leave us a 5-star review and whatnot. It will definitely help. And as I always say, keep it locked.